Welcome to the SCP Foundation Files Explored. Today's SCP is SCP-054, the Water Nymph. Object Class, Safe. The special containment procedures for SCP-054 are as follows. The subject is held in a watertight isolation room, outfitted with specialized climate control equipment. An ornate fountain filled with water stands in the center of this enclosure. Maintenance personnel are required to wear NBC suits while inside the containment area and must spend 10 minutes in a special drying room after exiting. In the event of a breach, the surrounding area should be evacuated and the entire enclosure filled with liquid nitrogen. The fountain's chemical levels and volume are to be monitored and maintained. Spring water from classified should be used as SCP is highly sensitive to hydrological conditions. SCP-054 has developed a distinct and severe mistrust of human males during its containment at the facility. Thus, the assignment of female personnel is highly recommended at all times. Description: out of the water, the subject most appears as a humanoid female, with a mean volume of 90 litres, comprised entirely of water. Other forms are possible, commonly geometric shapes. When it enters a body of water, it becomes indistinguishable from its surroundings. The subject must be periodically returned to a body of water in order to maintain a volume, due to evaporation. Initially found in Classified, it was moved to Site-08 for further study. The subject was initially curious about the Foundation personnel, and seemed to enjoy interacting with the maintenance staff and researchers, and mimicking their forms. After a number of weeks, the creature apparently felt comfortable enough to remain out of the water during routine monitoring, although it retreated when attempts were made to study its composition. SCP-054 is apparently composed of normal water, with no discernible, detectable, comparable differences. This is compared to ordinary spring water from the same source. No thermal, no electromagnetic, biological, or other phenomenon have ever been detected in its quote-unquote body. That would suggest how it animates. Water lost by SCP-054 to evaporation exhibits no special properties when condensed. Experiments with SCP-054 were halted when, data expunged, 2 researchers were injured. After this incident, containment procedures were updated. Subject therefore exhibits signs of severe mistrust and aggression around male personnel, which made up the majority of the original research staff. The subject was reclassified as Euclid. The following are partial transcripts from Audio Journal 054-A. Water Loss Experiment. The subject becomes withdrawn and inactive when denied access to water. Its compact shape is theorized to reduce the surface area exposed to the evaporation. For the first few days, it moved eagerly to greet anyone entering its enclosure, and behaved excitably. It possibly indicates an understanding by the subject that we can control its access to our water supply. Subject ceased this behavior yesterday, presumably in recognition that no help was forthcoming. Temperature extreme testing. We got authorization to attempt sub-zero testing this morning. The subject became lethargic as the temperature fell, and froze completely after classified seconds. Analysis of the ice crystals revealed no anomalies. Ice chips were collected for study. This is in stark contrast to its behavior in the 95 degrees test when it became aggressive and attempted to escape its enclosure. We've submitted a work order to combine the climate control equipment with the subject's standard enclosure, as it has begun to resist efforts to transport it into experimental chambers, with increasingly desperate behavior. Memory and coordination evaluation. Subject has proven unexpectedly adept at navigating complex mazes and solving puzzles. Dr. Seaskull has finally overcome the problem of motivating the subject by application of electrical shocks or silica desiccants. He joked that we should have it trained to fetch in no time, and after observing his methods, I think he might be right. Note: subject is allowed to a 48-hour recuperation period. It seems to be lagging its progression at the end of the week's experiments. Acid/base incorporation experiment. This is the last log entry recorded. I am starting with 0.0 mHCAI solution. I have no idea what will happen, but if this thing incorporates homeostatic mechanisms like I suspect it can, then we should get some insight into how it maintains its form. Temperature in the enclosure has been lowered to 278 K to help control 54's increasingly erratic behavior. Addendum 054-B. After 5 years with no incident, subject rating has been downgraded back to safe. on the recommendation of Dr. Classified. Experiments will resume under the auspices of Biology Unit E7. Caution should be exercised when interacting with this subject. Thank you for attending this briefing.